My parents were never the dependable type. They weren't the kind of grandparents who'd whip up a batch of brownies or take their grandson to the aquarium just for fun. Their lives orbited around their own desires, their schedules, their pleasures. But I was in a bind. My ex-wife was gallivanting across Europe with her new partner, acting as if our 6-year-old son didn't exist. She never once asked where he'd be while I was gone, just gave a careless shrug and said, "You'll sort it out." So I did. Or at least I thought I had. My parents seemed thrilled. "Of course, Daniel, he's our grandson. We'd be delighted to watch him." In hindsight, I should have caught the slight pause in my mother's voice before she agreed. Or how my dad muttered something about prior commitments but never elaborated. I sat them down and laid it out clearly. He's 6. He needs routine, meals at regular times, no candy for supper, no staying up late. And above all, never leave him by himself. They grinned like I was being overly cautious. "We raised you, didn't we?" my mom said with a chuckle. That should have been my first warning, but I had no other options. The call that shattered everything came on the 8th day. I checked in daily, and every time they fed me the same story. "Oh, he's having the time of his life. We went to the playground today. We made cupcakes together." Each evening when I called, they'd say, "Oh, he's already in bed. He had a big day and crashed early." They even sent videos. Him running around the backyard, giggling, looking happy. Everything seemed fine. So I didn't dig deeper. Then on the morning of the 8th day, my phone buzzed. It was Tom, my parents' neighbor, a retired electrician in his late 60s. He never called me. "Daniel," he said, his voice tense, "I don't want to scare you, but something's off." My heart sank. "What's wrong?" "I've been hearing crying from your parents' house since last night. It stops, then starts again." I knocked, but no one answered. "Their car's here, but I don't think they're home." My blood ran cold. "They have to be there." I was already calling my parents on my other phone. No answer. I tried again. Voicemail. I texted my mom. "Call me now." Nothing. I dialed Tom back. "I don't care how you do it. Get inside." A long pause. "You sure? Break a window if you have to." I heard glass shatter over the phone, then silence. Then Tom muttering under his breath, furious. "They're not here, Daniel," he said, voice tight. A pause. "But your boy is." A 9-hour drive fueled by fury. "He's in his room trembling," Tom went on. "Looks like he's been alone for a while." I was already tossing clothes into a bag. "Put him on." There was a rustle, then a small, shaky voice. "Dad," my breath caught. "Hey, buddy, I'm coming, okay? You're safe now. Tom's with you," he sniffled. I was scared. The storm was so loud. My fists clenched. He was terrified, and I wasn't there. They weren't there. "Tom," I said, "how long?" He says they left 3 days ago. 3 days. They'd packed bags, told him they'd be back soon, and locked the door behind them. I grabbed my keys and bolted. It's a 9-hour drive, but I didn't care. I broke every speed limit. Got stopped 3 times. 2 officers let me go after hearing the story. The third looked appalled and said, "Drive safe, but get there quick." By the time I pulled into my parents' driveway, it was nearly midnight. Tom sat on the porch with my son, who was wrapped in a blanket, half asleep on a bench. The moment I stepped out of the car, my boy ran to me, clinging to my legs like I might vanish. I knelt and held him tight. "I'm here, buddy. I'm right here." Tom stood nearby, arms folded. "Kid barely ate." I gave him what I had, but he didn't want much, kept saying they'd be back soon. I swallowed my rage. "Did they call, text?" Tom shook his head. "Not a word." When they finally returned, it was 7:12 a.m. The front door swung open. I expected remorse, maybe concern. Instead, my mother strolled in like she just popped out for coffee. My father trailed behind, yawning like he'd had the best nap of his life. They were suntanned, carefree, dressed in resort wear. "Oh, Daniel, you're here," my mom chirped. "We were going to call you later." I stared. "Where the hell were you?" She waved a hand dismissively. "Just a quick getaway. Your dad and I found a deal on a cruise. You wouldn't believe the food." She laughed, my hands balled into fists. "You left a 6-year-old alone for 3 days." She rolled her eyes. "Daniel, don't be so dramatic. We left plenty of snacks." I looked at my dad, who was pouring himself coffee like it was any other morning. "Are you kidding me? He's 6. My dad shrugged. "He's not an infant. Kids need to toughen up." I let out a bitter laugh. "Toughen up? He's in 1st grade, not boot camp." My mom sighed like I was exhausting her. "Daniel, we were gone a few days." "He's fine." I pointed to the couch where my son slept, exhausted. "He cried alone in the dark during a storm. He barely ate. He thought you'd be back any second." My mom pursed her lips. "Oh, don't be absurd. We needed that trip. We earned it." That was it. Something in me broke. I walked to the front door, grabbed their car keys, the car I'd paid for, and pocketed them. My dad frowned. "What are you doing? You're not going anywhere." He laughed. "You can't take our car." "It's my car," I said coldly. "If you need to go somewhere, call a cab." My mom gasped. "Daniel, that's outrageous." I turned, my voice steady. "You know what's outrageous? Leaving a 6-year-old locked in a house so you could sip cocktails on a cruise." I scooped up my son and walked out. My mom stormed onto the porch barefoot, still in her vacation outfit. "Daniel, you're not taking our car." "Give me the keys." I kept walking. My son's small hands clutched my coat like he feared I'd disappear. My dad called after me. "We get it, you're mad, but this little stunt." I stopped and turned. "My stunt?" My voice was like steel. "You abandoned a 6-year-old for 3 days." My mom groaned. "Oh my God, not this again." I looked at them. "If you were anyone else, you'd be in handcuffs right now." Then I got in my car and drove off. I didn't look back. I should have known they'd pull something else. A week after I left them standing on their porch, fuming and helpless, I thought maybe they'd realized they had no defense for what they'd done. Maybe they were too humiliated to try anything. I was wrong. The confrontation came when I was cooking dinner. Tires screeched outside, followed by loud banging on my door. I knew who it was before I opened it. My parents stood there, looking like petulant kids ready to throw a fit. But they weren't alone. Leaning against an old pickup was my Uncle Frank, a guy I hadn't seen in years. His familiar grimace was unmistakable. He was the family's so-called problem solver, the one they dragged in to set people straight. A burly man built like an ex-wrestler. I sighed. Of course they brought Frank. He stepped forward, acting like he owned the place. "Daniel, we need to talk." "No, we don't," my mom scoffed. "You've made our lives impossible, young man." I almost laughed. "Oh, you mean by taking back the car I paid for, by cutting off the credit cards you swiped from me?" my dad muttered. "You didn't need to go that far." I clenched my jaw. "You left my son alone for 3 days. That wasn't too far." Frank raised a hand, playing referee. "Okay, let's cool off." Then he turned to me. "Family looks out for family, Daniel. That's how it works." I narrowed my eyes. "Oh, really? Because last I checked, family doesn't ditch a 6-year-old to go party on a cruise." Frank sighed like I was hopeless. "You can't just cut them off. It's wrong. They're struggling because of you." I blinked. "Because of me?" Frank nodded, serious. "They don't have a car, Daniel. How are they supposed to get by?" I gestured at him. "You drove them here. They seem to be managing." My mom huffed. "That's not the issue. We're your parents." "You owe us." I stared at her. "I owe you." My dad nodded like it was obvious. "We raised you, didn't we? Fed you, clothed you." I cut him off. "You didn't do me a favor, Dad." "That's what parents do." Frank raised his hands again, trying to mediate. "Let's sort this like grown-ups. There's one thing you can do to fix this." I knew I wouldn't like it. "And what's that?" My mom smiled, thinking she'd won. "Give us back the car and reactivate the credit card." I laughed, a real "you've got to be joking" laugh. "You really think that's happening?" Frank stepped closer, his voice low. "Be reasonable, Daniel." I tilted my head. "See, Frank, that's the problem. You think reasonable means giving them whatever they want, no matter how badly they mess up. That's not how it works anymore." Frank's face hardened. "You don't want to start trouble over this." I smiled. "Trouble? No, Frank. Trouble is what happens if you show up at my house again trying to bully me. I'll call the cops so fast you won't finish your little lecture." Silence. My mom scoffed and waved a hand. "Oh, stop being so dramatic, Daniel. We're your family." I looked her in the eye. "No, you're not." She flinched like I'd struck her. I turned, walked inside, and slammed the door in their faces. I should have seen the next part coming. My parents weren't the type to accept accountability. They didn't sit back and reflect on their wrongs. No, they played the victims, and that's exactly what they did. Within a day, they started a smear campaign. They called every relative we had, distant cousins, aunts, uncles, everyone. They claimed I'd stolen their car, left them stranded, cut them off for no reason. They painted themselves as devoted, aging parents who'd sacrificed everything, only to be betrayed by their selfish son. And people bought it. The calls flooded in. First Aunt Susan. "Daniel, how could you do this to your parents?" Then my dad's cousin Steve. "I knew you had a temper, but this is cruel." Then more. People who never cared about my life suddenly had opinions about my actions. At first, I ignored them. But they kept coming. When Aunt Margaret, the one relative I actually admired, called, I picked up. She gave the same lecture, family loyalty, respect, how we only get one set of parents. I let her finish. Then I told her everything. How my parents had agreed to care for their 6-year-old grandson. How I'd trusted them. How they'd lied to me while they packed for a cruise. How they'd locked my son in a house alone for 3 days. How the only reason he was safe was because a neighbor heard him crying and broke in. When I finished, Aunt Margaret was quiet. Then she whispered, "My God." That was all it took. By the next day, the family had turned on them. The pity calls stopped. The criticism vanished. And the kicker, my parents hadn't just lied about me. They'd also downplayed their getaway. They told everyone they were stranded without a car, but neglected to mention they were planning another trip to Atlantic City. With what money? The emergency credit card I'd canceled. That's why they'd shown up at my house, demanding the car and card. Not because they were struggling, not because they needed help, because they wanted another vacation. When the family found out they were finished, my parents, they were livid. They tried to spin the story, but it was too late. For the first time in my life, I knew they'd never hold sway over me again. Because the only thing that mattered was the little boy sleeping soundly in his room, knowing he'd never be left alone again.